That's fine. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the February 1st, 2016 County Commission meeting. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I don't think we have any citizens to address the commission. We do have 3 items under our zoning regarding and to have a public hearing. So Dr. Ripple, if you'd come forward, please, sir. And I guess we'll do these one at a time, and we'll have the public hearing after we review each one of these cases. So if you would, Dr. Ripple, CZO-1-2015, resolution amending the text of the zoning resolution of Montgomery County, Tennessee in its entirety without amendment to the zoning map designations.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll give you a brief overview of this update to the county zoning resolution. Point out, number one, this involves the text only. The map is not being changed by this particular action. Number two, that your original zoning resolution was adopted July 9th, 1973. There have been 69 minor text amendments since then, but this is the first major update or reformatting of that particular rezoning resolution. This has been a multi-year effort on part of the Planning Commission staff. Once the draft was prepared, the Planning Commission staff met in 6 afternoon sessions to go through the entire document and review the changes that were being made. Then the document went over to the County Building Codes Department, and Rod Streeter and several of his staff reviewed the document, and we met again in 3 afternoon sessions with them to review the document. The proposed update was introduced by the Planning Commission just before Thanksgiving. We held then a meeting with the City County Economic and Community Development Committee, the City County Residential Development Commission. We met with the development community. And then the Planning Commission made some minor amendments in December, which was to alter the side yard requirement for the R1A, RM2, R3, and R4 to make them all 10 feet. Then a public hearing was held. No one spoke before the Planning Commission at that time. Planning Commission deferred action intentionally to give another round of opportunity for the development community to speak again in January. And last month, the Planning Commission then held another public hearing. No comments were made, and the Planning Commission adopted this zoning resolution update and forwards it to you. Overall, the update serves 3 purposes. Number 1 is to make it user-friendly, and then number 2, related to that, is to ensure consistency. By user-friendly, you now can pull out 2 tables out of the entire document, and you've summarized the entire zoning resolution. The land use table and a table we call the bulk table that has the area and yard requirements associated with it. So you can just pull out those 2 tables and you have the entire document. The current document, if you want to find out what's in the commercial, in a commercial district, you got a C5, you got to go back to C4, C3, C2, C1. If you want to know what's in the R4, you got to start with R4 and then flip all the way back to the agricultural district to figure out what the uses are. So user-friendly, pull out 2 tables and you got it in front of you. Consistency, there were many consistencies even from 1973 where you would find a side yard requirement listed one place for that zone, and on that same page would find another dimension for that same side yard requirement. Or you would find an instance in which the In a particular residential zone, it said it's 12,000 square feet for a residential lot, but it didn't tell you what the lot size was for a church that's permitted in the residential zone. That's the example of number one. Number two was to eliminate some legal deficiencies, and these range from simply being the federal government is requiring all local jurisdictions to list each of the flood zone maps by number. You can't say 1 through 10, you got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all of them. The other extreme is that the document relative to how it grandfathered in uses, treated non-conforming uses, had requirements that were based on Kentucky's state enabling legislation, not Tennessee's. So we fixed it and put in Tennessee's requirement, which is grandfathering in. You get 30 months of grace period, after which it may be considered abandonment. But the fact is that a non-conforming use continues in perpetuity, and it runs with the land, not with the individuals. So the only way that the non-conforming use or grandfathered use is for the individual to literally walk away from the property, let it go on the tax sale, or the person changes the use from a non-conforming use to a permitted use or a conforming use. Under what circumstances they can't go back to reestablish non-conforming. The third thing that we accomplished was relative to facilitating economic development. And there were two significant things that we did do in the document. One was within the M2, which is the heavy commercial district, which is associated with much of our city-county industrial park owned by the IDB. We have amended the height in that particular zoning district to be 100 feet. The key here is it must be served by the city fire service. Otherwise, there's a 45-foot height requirement for all structures in the unincorporated area. Number two, we amended, and it's unique for the county, a M3 planned industrial district. It does not exist in the city. It used to be that you had to sort of develop a concept plan of where you're going to place the uses and where within your proposed industrial park. We removed that restriction. So you may have office, you may have light industrial, you may mix the two together. You still must have a minimum of 15 acres, but you need not pre-identify the size of the lots and where those uses are being placed. And we believe that will facilitate the use of that M3 zone to be a transition zone then between the M2 heavy industrial and our residential areas. At this point in time, there was, and I passed out a listing of significant changes. Even though the document seems to be lengthy and much of it is reformatting of the existing document, and much of the additional 100 pages is a result of having added conditions where we have, as we did before, uses permitted by right, uses permitted with conditions if the conditions are met, uses permitted on review, which go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and accessory uses. And what we've done is taken and identified what those conditions are to ensure that we can legally defend any action of the Board of Zoning Appeals or building and codes of the Planning Commission. Any questions?
Any questions of Dr. Ripley?
Seeing none, I'll then defer for a formal public hearing on this.
Okay, Dr. Ripple, thank y'all. I know you and your staff have put a lot of hours into this, and I certainly appreciate the effort. I think if commissioners have changes, this little cheat sheet you put together on the significant changes would be a great place for them to get a quick summary of what you've done, and if they do have questions, I'm sure your office will be available. So we're going to go into public hearing to hear CZO-1-2015. This is a resolution amending the text of the zoning resolution of Montgomery County, Tennessee in its entirety without amendment to the zoning map designations. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of CZO-1-2015? Anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to CZO-1-2015? Being no one to speak, we'll close the public hearing on CZO-1-2015. Dr. Ripple, CZ-1-2016, application of Sid Hedrick from AG to R1.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got to go back my slides here. Case CZ 2016, this is the application of Sid Hedrick from agricultural to R1 for roughly 6 acres. As you can see on the map here, it's on Dotsonville Road, just north of Martin Road. The intersection of Martin and Dotsonville Road, I believe, is the C and D market, so it's one parcel removed. Sid Hedrick is requesting the southern portion of a slightly larger tract to be rezoned to R1. The northern portion of the tract will remain agricultural. That's where the residents exist on the parcel itself. This is the existing residence on the parcel. This is the vacant 6 acres of the land. Sid did provide at the Planning Commission public hearing and did indicate that his intent was to develop 4 lots out of the 6 acres. That would be roughly 1.5 acres each, which would be the minimum lot area for the agricultural zone. However, because of limited frontage on Dotsonville Road, he can't meet the 150-foot minimum lot width requirement of the agricultural district. So that's what's driving the request to go to R1 such that he can have a 90-foot lot width. He can then have 4 lots, and because of the shape of the property, they are deep in nature. If you look at the surrounding properties, you'll see several of the lots there, although they're in the agricultural zone, and although they typically meet the 1.5 acre minimum lot size, you'll find that there are many lots, both on Dotsonville and Martin Road, that even though they meet the minimum lot size, do not meet the minimum lot width of 150 feet required in an agricultural zone. So the bottom line here, perspective, is that what he is proposing is consistent with what is other lots in the immediate area. And both the staff and the Planning Commission recommend your approval on this.
Any questions of Dr. Ripple before we go into public hearing? Commissioner Butts?
Thank you, Mayor. On this case number, I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention, it says County Commission District 11. That's actually District 7, I believe, on the paperwork I have here.
We've got to clean that up, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
We've got...
Thank
That's
you,
it,
Commissioner
Mayor.
Butts.
Thank you,
Any
Doc.
other questions of Dr. Ripple before we go into public hearing? All right. Without objection, we'll go into public hearing to hear comments relating to zoning case CZ 1-2016, application of Sid Hedrick from AG to R1. Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of CZ 1-2016? Please come forward. If If you would, please state your name, your address, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'm Sid Hedrick. My address is 2006 Hidden Meadows Drive, Adams, Tennessee. I'm just here to kind of reiterate what Dr. Ripple has told you. I'm going for a 100-foot lot width, which I'm going to need an R1 zoning for that. However, R1 is not really out of character for this area in particular. In fact, if you follow Dotsonville Road to the south, you'll run along several other residential subdivisions that are actually zoned R1. There's South Winds, Chrisman Hills, Churchview Estates. There are several properties along Get Manning Road that are zoned R1, and those properties do not actually have over 1 or 1.5 acres like these lots will have. The 100-foot lot width is beyond the minimum width for R1, and I feel like that they meet the area quite nicely. There are going to be some nice road frontage lots. I've spoken with the water department. There's adequate water out there to service those 4 lots, and I hope that you guys will vote my way.
Thank you, Mr. Hedrick. Any questions of Mr. Hedrick? All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience like to speak in favor of CZ 1-2016? Anyone in the audience to speak in opposition to CZ 1-2016? All righty, we'll close the public hearing on CZ 1-2016. Dr. Ripple, CZ 2-2016, application of Doug Hildreth from AG to R1.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is a rezoning request of Doug Hildreth from agricultural to R1 residential on 67 acres. The acreage is located on the north side of US 41A, a little bit east of Sango Drive, McAdoo Creek Road, and the major entrance into the development is Toes Lane. As a part of this study, a traffic assessment was done to ensure there was adequate sight distance at Toes Lane, and that is the case. And that the level of service for people turning out or in Toes Lane would be adequate, and it is. The City Council Gas and Water Committee has approved the extension of sewer and water lines to this particular property. There were no other concerns expressed by any agencies, and both the staff and the Planning Commission recommended favorable approval on this case. Are there any questions?
Any questions of Dr. Ripple prior to going into public hearing on this matter? Mr. Harper?
Thank you, Mayor. How many lots are we looking at on the 67 acres?
They came up with a conceptual plan. They're not required if the zoning's changed, but they came up with 139 lots. I think they will go on and cluster the development to try to increase the lot yield. They do not have to. By clustering the development, they are able to keep the yield up, and they're able to set aside the property that's in the sort of the southeast corner that's steep and wooded.
Does that meet the area standards?
Yes, it would. And if you look on the map, as I go through here, you'll see that the adjacent land immediately to the west is zoned R1A, which would be 12,000 square lots, where they are proposing R1, which is 15,000 square foot lots. If it were clustered, they could step down and do basically 12,000 on the perimeter and some smaller lots on the inside, but their conceptual plan did not show that.
The elevation on 41A, is there a decline on 41A where that entrance would be on Towers Lane?
If you look at the graphic here, we'll see on the left side, you'll see 2 fences that are sort of highlight where Toes Lane is located. And this is the hill. It's at the bottom of the hill, and what the engineer for the applicant did was to ensure there was adequate stopping sight distance for vehicles going in both directions, such that this particular entrance is not an issue.
And this area is past the widening of 41A?
Yes,
correct?
it is.
So there'll still be 2 lanes?
Yes, it'll still be 2 lanes. It is just past the transition from 4 back to 2 lanes that occurs just after Sango Drive.
Thanks.
Commissioner Genus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I basically had the same questions. I was real concerned when I saw the 139 lots all stuck inside of Toes Lane. That is the only entry and exit out of there. And you answered really everything else. Is that not a concern? And then also the water drainage area, I was real concerned. I remember years ago, that area can get awful mushy. I've got one area in and out with a minimum of 139 homes going in. Is that not a concern of the Planning Commission?
Number one, if the picture here shows toe lane 18 feet, there may be need to make some minor widenings to Toes Lane. When the subdivision does come in, the Planning Commission staff and even in their concept plan, they did show a stub to the north that would go through other property to Sango Drive, and that would give a second outlet to this particular development if the property to the north were developed. And drainage issues, I'll let the applicant or his engineer address that, but the bottom line is all drainage issues will be resolved at the subdivision approval stage. They cannot increase the rate of runoff off their property and must retain or detain water on the properties to ensure that there's no adverse impact on surrounding property owners.
Thank you very much. Just my concern, that's not my area, but I would think that our folks around there, especially our AG folks, I guess to the east there would be some concern.
Absolutely, those are valid questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions of Dr. Ripple? All right, we'll go into public hearing for case number CZ2-2016, application of Doug Hildreth from AG to R1. Anyone in the audience to speak in favor of CZ2-2016? Please come forward. If you would, just state your name and your address, please, sir, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We won't time you, but we'll keep an eye on you.
My name's Doug Hildreth. I'm the property owner. I live at 154 Towles Lane. My family has farmed this land for 25 years, and it's not legacy property for us. And I'm getting to the age where I need to have a pivotal change in my life and do something different. The zoning request before you tonight is to really increase my opportunities for land use for the property. There's Clarksville gas, water, and sewer on the property. There's over 150 feet of road frontage on 41A, 650 feet of road frontage on Towles Lane. There's the property to the west. I'm one parcel away from Sango Crossing subdivision. I'm one parcel away to the east from East Haven subdivision development. And to the point about where 41A is necking down from 4-lane to 2-lane, I'm about 500 yards past that. And I'm also in the urban growth plan. Questions? I appreciate your consideration.
Any questions of Mr. Hildreth? Commissioner Vallejos?
Thank you, Mayor. So you've been farming this land?
Yes.
You know, my concerns is, and maybe I heard you're getting a change in your life, but My concern is we're losing so much land, so much farming land in our county. And, you know, all across the country, we're losing farming land. And it's your private business, it's your property, it's your right. But my concern is as we continue to build on so much farmland in rural area, we're losing that rural feeling. And I understand you want to do what you want to do to move forward, but my concern is the loss of so much farmland. Thank you, sir.
I share that same concern. Until last fall, I had a shoulder rebuilt. I have some heart conditions. Until I recognized my health concerns, I had the same feeling. That changed my attitude on land use. I have no heirs here to farm it after me. With all these developments nearby and being in the urban growth plan, 4-lane 41A, it's becoming too valuable to farm anymore.
So you never thought about leasing your land or talking with our AG department or, no? Okay,
No,
thank you.
No. If anybody here is familiar with the old Sango Mills, where we had retail farm sales, this is the old Sango Mills property.
Commissioner Harper.
Thanks, Mayor. Do you have any plans to have a minimum house size or any other restrictions on the property?
Sir, I'm not a developer. I just want to change my opportunities for land use. I have no earthly idea of what from a development standpoint, you know, what those rules are.
So basically a clean slate where anything can happen?
Well, anything can happen with R1 land use. I'm still living adjacent to the property, and so I am concerned about what happens there. But no, I'm not a developer. I'm just looking to request a zoning change.
Okay, I'm not aware of any other subdivisions of 41A South between, let's say, Shady Grove and towards exit 19, other than Ivy Bend, that are below the road or below the road grade. I think Ivy Bend's the only one that's on the top of an elevation. Do you have any concerns at all about that entrance?
No, I mean, there's never been an accident there in the 25 years we've been there. We don't have a problem going in and out. Frankly, I was surprised that a traffic study was requested, but I'm glad that they agreed with us.
I mean, just up the road from my house into town is a development called The Villages.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Villages.
The Villages, and you have a similar amount of properties. I would say a lot of the folks in the Villages, I see them having difficulty turning on or turning right or left, either one on 41A South, so I do have a concern about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sokol.
Thank you, Mayor. You said that you're not going to develop it. You just want to change the classification. Is that correct?
Yes.
So have you talked to somebody that's going to develop it?
Yes, I have.
And who would that be?
That would be Magnolia Partners Associates.
Are they here in Clarksville?
Yes, they are.
Okay, my concern is clustering. Right now, as the land is, you say how many houses can be built on it?
Dr. Ripple, I don't know.
I think he said 139 lots. Wasn't that correct, Dr. Ripple?
That's what they have.
It's
139 without clustering.
That's what they have proposed. So it doesn't matter whether it's clustered or not. The cluster yield is the maximum yield you could get from the site if you did a conventional 15,000 square lot and set aside 15% of the property for roadways. So the maximum number of units they can get on the property does not increase whether they choose cluster or traditional. What it does do is they're more likely to get to get that lot yield by setting aside the steep slopes in the woodlands into an open space area.
Yeah, I understand that because this body had a long conversation about clustering years ago. My concern is the individual that's going to come in and develop it adheres to those strict standards to make sure that it abides by what the county has set.
They've got to follow the zoning rules, and Rod Streeter and his staff will enforce those rules.
Thank you.
Commissioner Riccone.
I'm just making sure I'm following this. This is maybe more for Dr. Ripple. It was approved at the staff level, correct?
Correct. Both the Planning Commission and the staff unanimously approved the rezoning.
And we're consistent with the growth plan, right?
Yes, we're in the urban growth boundary area, the area into which the city technically could annex. It's the area where you would typically find sewer and water lines.
So everything that's required to be done in your office has been done and it's passed, correct?
Correct. The next step, if rezone, would be at some point in the future, there may be a subdivision that would go through, and we'd then subject this proposal to greater scrutiny at that point in time.
And it sounds like Mr. Hildreth here is really just asking that he get his property zoned so it could be used for its highest and best use. Would that be accurate?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hildreth. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak in favor of CZ-2-2016? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to CZ-2-2016? All right, we'll close public hearing. Dr. Ripple, thank you, sir. Skip, I think you need a minute or two to swap this computer over, so I'll give you a minute. Okay. We'll move on into our agenda under our resolutions. Our first resolution is Resolution 16-2-1. This is a resolution to acquire certain real estate located at 4662 Old Ashland City Road, adjacent to the Fredonia School. Commissioner Albert, you're flashing, so you can talk.
All right, thank you, sir. This is a piece of property that's come available to the Parks Department. We had no idea that this land was going to come up for sale. We are looking to purchase the property to go along with the 15 acres there at the old Fredonia School. And what we're looking at is that it's a lot easier to buy the property and develop it as the main property is being developed, because if you come in after the fact, where you've already got your established parking, playground area, outside activities, then they can't be changed or moved. They're already developed and they're going to be there. So it's a good opportunity for us as the Parks Department to purchase this, to go in conjunction to whenever the property is fully developed. It's an area in the community where it's well supported. As most of you know, from the first input meeting, we had well over 100 people attend. And from what I'm hearing, the next input next Thursday, they're pushing for 150 people. That's unheard of in any kind of input meeting from a community. It's an area that's well established. They're supportive. From my understanding, just that little area in the county, it's $5.5 million in taxes that they contribute to the county. So they're just looking for a little piece of the pie to be something they can use that will be usable for them. and other residents within the county. I think from what I've heard of the last few weeks, there's been sort of a misconception that when the county bought the property, that it would be up to the community or the Friends of Fredonia to raise all the money, renovate it, do the whole 9 yards, in which that's not true. It'd be the same scenario that with South Guthrie was developed. They had an established building that was usable, and I use that loosely because it was in pretty bad shape. But they had a Friends of South Guthrie, but that group did not contribute a dime to the renovation and whatever's been done to this day out at that property. They continue to use it as a group, as well as Fredonia. Friends of Fredonia will use it. So I ask your support in making this resolution go forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Genus?
Thank you, Mayor. As the president of the Montgomery County Parks Committee, we did get this motion from them as far as the property. I'm going to say that the committee grilled them extensively on why we want it, what's going on, how you're going to use it, and that the Friends of the Fredonia area understood that this is another commitment from the county to support that underserved area. And once we took them to task as to why, what, where, when, and how you're going to use it, we voted 100% in favor of supporting that community and to show them that, hey, it's going to take time. We're talking years down the road as we improve slowly but surely, but that we want to put our commitment into there as a community and as county commissioners. And they are definitely willing to do everything for a lot of the upkeep and things like this to do their part to improve this area so they can be proud of that area. So I just want to say that the committee 100% is in support of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Genus. Commissioner Nichols?
Thank you, Mayor. Could we get the aerial image back up, and could we get a pointer to kind of outline the land, the parcel we're talking about, please? Do we have a pointer?
I can do it on my screen, but I don't think it shows up on yours.
I think it would help everybody get an appreciation. Oh, new technology, we got to try it out.
Icon?
Yeah.
There you go, thank you. The actual property runs almost, it's sort of right in the driveway, there to the right, going all the way down, sort of straight down, and then it goes over all the way to the second tree line to the left. If you go on over to the next one, and then sort of straight back up to the highway. That's what encompasses about 1.8 acres.
It should be attached to your resolution, and it's parcel 89. So in your packet, you should have a smaller map that shows the parcel. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This may be a tad bit off topic, but I just had to make some point of clarification. As the mention was made of South Guthrie Community Center, the South Guthrie Community Center was operated and maintained by the people of the community for some 30 years without much, if any, help from the county. The South Guthrie Community Center was actually in use all the way up until the building itself was locked so that the county could come in and begin the renovations for the new building that they have now. I think that that is at least worth mentioning in relation to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to, on the same lines as Commissioner Johnson, when South Guthrie was mentioned in there, I know that they kept the upkeep and did all that right along. Now, it's my understanding that this property is just going to be used for like the parking lot. Is that correct? Is that what?
I think it will be put into the overall property package, and so I would assume that some of it would be parking, yes.
Right.
There's been some discussion there, the old doctor's house that was part of the purchase, that's across the street from the old school, could go back in the back left corner back up there where the picture's gone now, but it says about where vote was.
Split screen.
But back up where the trees make a L, back in there. There's just been talk of that. Personally, I think there's some concern on the commission about the price of it compared to what we paid for the other. And it's got a pretty daggum nice house on it. I think that there's potential that you could probably carve that house out in a lot and sell that and maybe get your money back and still have about 1.5 acres to be able to use for parking. And you could eliminate on the left side of the building, as Commissioner Albert pointed out, the property line runs about right down the driveway. So the issue is getting to the back of the building on both sides of those school buildings. So you could eliminate that issue, maybe leave the house there, sell it, and be a win-win for everybody. It's a thought.
So is the drive that goes up next to there by the telephone poles not wide enough? Is that what you're?
Well, what happens in Commissioner Albert, you help me, but it becomes between the building and the property line, the school building. It's very, very narrow. So it may be trouble having 2 lanes going on each side. I think the other side's even worse. So it's just a concern. And so the parking's going to have to go to the rear. And so when this property became available, it was brought to my attention. I suggested it go to the Parks and Rec Committee. It went to the Parks and Rec Committee. From there, it went to the Budget Committee, and here we are here tonight.
I got one more question. When we purchased the property, it was in order to help the Friends of Fredonia to get together and to do what all they need to do to have a community center. And then from that point, we helped them a little further and gave them the spot money in order for they could start writing grants. Are there any grants on the horizon?
Well, I think that's part, Jerry can probably answer that question better than I can, but that's part of this process, this meeting he was talking about. So, Jerry, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, Mr. Gannon, what it does, it sets them, once they get their status established, their 501(c), then yes, they are eligible to apply for grants as long as it is government owned, because most of the time they're an 80-20 match. And to go after a good grant's $250,000, $500,000, then you've got to have at least probably a 20% match, where it'd be in dollars, in land, whatever the case may be that they accept at the time of the grants. And their grant cycle is now, which we're behind the 8 ball, and they only come around every 2 years. So by the time, if we purchase the property and they get established, which they're not quite there, by the next grant cycle, they're able to apply to help purchase amenities, where it be landscaping, interior items, whatever the grants are available for. It puts them in place to do it.
Yeah. I'm talking about the Fredonia Schoolhouse is already government owned, though.
Yes.
Correct. So it's already a 501(c)(3). So it's already eligible for grant. Right.
Which we are in pursuit to try to apply for some grants for the county itself, yes. But that puts 2 people in position. It puts the county in position as well as that individual group to apply for grants. There could be 2 out there that both of us could apply for.
Thank you, Commissioner Gannon. Commissioner Redd?
How much did this property appraise for?
There has not been an appraisal done on it. They are asking $119,000 for it, and they have said that was negotiable.
It is negotiable?
That's what I have been told, yes, sir.
So if it's approved, most likely we will try to ask for a lower price. I mean, the 119th won't be locked in. This resolution will give you the ability to ask as well for a lower price.
Without a doubt, yes, sir.
You think, are we going to do an appraisal on it?
I don't know if we'd want to spend the money to do an appraisal on it. We have the sales history on it. I think it was sold in about a year and a half ago when we know what that sale price was. So, you know, we could spend $3,000 or $4,000 on an appraisal and maybe can make an offer that could save that.
Right, I was wondering what the tax, does anybody look at the tax roll thing? I mean, I know that's not the
We
most
looked
accurate.
at that at the budget committee. I don't remember what it was, though. Does anybody remember what that was? What, did you hear that, Commissioner Red?
I did not.
Is $110,700.
Okay. That was the building and the lot.
Correct.
Building and the lot. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Harper.
Thank you, Mayor Durrett. Question, I guess it's going to go back to Jerry. Originally, the property with the schoolhouse, we paid $160,000. It was 14.8 acres. And I know this property is listed for sale presently. Has anyone approached the property owner about them splitting off the property we're actually interested in, letting them retain the house if they want to sell it? I look at the average price per acre, we ought to be able to get enough parking area for probably $10,000 to $15,000, I would think. That seems to me to be a more reasonable and logical way to proceed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we have not approached the actual owner. We are working through the real estate agent. And from my understanding, what I've been told, there was a lady and her son that bought the property, and I don't know if it's health issues or whatever. There's no one living in the home now. They've had to move. So I don't know if she would be willing to sell it off partial, because they will not be living there anymore.
I'd really like to encourage that we pursue that alternative, if at all possible.
I think we'll look at every alternative we can once we are able to do so.
Thanks.
Commissioner Albert.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't want to slight the South Guthrie people, because I was there from day one when the building was being used by that group. And they just got to the point that a lot of the users were getting older. They couldn't get their funds for their membership that they charged to there. So they finally reached out to the county, because they knew that they could no longer do what they were doing and try to entice other people, because they knew the building could be used for a better use. And that's why we chose as a county to reach out to them, and they reached out to us, and that's where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that everybody? Commissioner Harper, I agree with your point, and that's kind of what I talked about maybe if we could put together a deal to buy it, subdivide off the lot. But honestly, if we can just buy the property, I think that's what we'll try to do. I just don't know if we have a seller that's willing to do that.
Right, it'd be great, because I really don't want to be in the position where we're owning a home that we need to resell. I don't like that part of it at all.
I don't like that math at all.
Thank you,
Anybody
Mayor.
else on 16-2-1? Commissioner Red?
Just a question then real quickly. Can this resolution be amended that if it is approved, the house portion there would be sold from the county within, a reasonable amount of time if it were to pass?
I think it could be amended to that. I would certainly want to get with Dr. Ripple and make sure from a zoning standpoint what options we had, and maybe we can do that. And if we get some stuff from him in the next day or two, we'll share it with the entire commission.
Okay, because if it's our intention,
Yeah.
if we bought it and we're going to set, we could maybe have that line, maybe council could address that as well. Thanks.
All right, item 16-2-2 has been pulled from the agenda. Item 16-2-3 is a resolution to amend the budget for the Agricultural Extension Office for fiscal year 2016. Is Rebecca here? Are you going to handle that,
I can
Jeff?
speak on it. What this is, it's no new money for that property. For the Ag Extension Office, it's just a reallocation. She's pulling some of that money out of salary supplements. One, to cover an overage she'll eventually have in her medical insurance due to new hires. Another for an overage she'll have in workers' comp without that move. The other two items, the data processing equipment, she will use to purchase computers for, I believe, 4 of her employees. There are some state matching funds involved with that. And on the last, under the other equipment, that is to purchase a livestock scale for the Ag Extension Office. And like I said, this is just no new money.
Any questions of Mr. Taylor? All righty. Resolution 15-2-4 is a resolution amending the budget of the Montgomery County Assessor of Property. I think Ms. Hester is here. I think she probably has a little presentation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, I do.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's hot in here.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for having me here tonight to discuss this resolution. I would also like to thank my staff who has showed up on their own time to support this initiative. I have to say it's a little more intimidating being on this side of the podium than where I used to sit up there. But I'm going to start the presentation tonight by just giving you a few reminders of what the assessor's office does. There's such a huge scope in the function of the office that I think that it's important to lay the groundwork that way. The state constitution is very clear in the separation of the taxing body, y'all, and the city council, and the assessor of property. And the assessor of property, of course, we apply the property values to every property in Montgomery County, including the city of Clarksville. And then the legislative bodies apply the tax rate. And the point of that being set up that way is to protect the property owner from any potential unfair treatment. Having said that, the assessor's office is mandated to discover, list, and value any real and personal property. So that's commercial, industrial, residential, farm, taxable leaseholds. We are required to index, it's in the code, it's referred to as an index of taxpayers, which is essentially just the assessment roll, and that is how the tax bill is created. Maintain property tax maps of the county, and reappraise. So just pause here for a minute. Y'all are familiar with reappraisal. After you were elected, I came back and gave an update on the 2014 reappraisal. And we reappraised in 2014 was the most recent one, but we reappraised the next year's in 2019. The state requires that we reappraise every year. So even though we have a major year that is tied to the reappraisal, 14 and then coming up next in 19, we are reappraising in the office all the time. And then we also spend considerable amount of time on tax-free exemptions, property transfers, and appeals. But this evening, I am here to discuss the field appraisers. And a field appraiser historically was more of a measurer lister. So that's somebody that would go to a newly built home and walk the perimeter and measure it. And that's how it would come back in the office, sketch it, and that's how it got on the roll and the tax dollars came in. As the industry has progressed and our office has become more sophisticated, these field appraisers do the responsibility of a measurer lister. But then when we get to the reappraisal cycle, closer to the 5-year reappraisal cycle, then they become more of an analyst. So a field appraiser is, in this case, and I'm just talking about residential, we're valuing new construction. The annual inspection review is approximately 25% of the county each year. And then informal value reviews, and just to give you an idea of what an informal value review is, somebody can come in the office because they just refinanced their home, and the interest rates have been low for quite some time, so we get a lot of these. And bring in the appraisal from their refinance, and inevitably it's going to be a different value, and it's typically lower. So they will come in and say, you know, y'all have got my house overvalued. We just had it reappraised, and or they could just come in. They've just bought the property, look at our value. So we have over 1,000 of those. It could be really quick. They come in, we run the comps, they walk away happy, or we're doing a full-on residential appraisal. It just depends on the property owner and the property itself. But moving on to how many people we serve, and I know y'all are familiar with these numbers, but let me just refresh you. According to the Census Bureau, we are anticipated to hit over 200,000 people in Montgomery County this year. We are gaining in population about 5,110 people a year, or that's 14 people a day. So our average population increase over the last several years has been about 3% a year. And this is just a map that I actually got at a Division of Property Assessments retreat. But, you know, we hear in the news all the time about Nashville and their growth. And that is, of course, feeding into its surrounding counties. But you can see us up there at 10.2% growth. We're the second fastest growing county in the state. And I think I just skipped one. Parcel growth. So population growth leads into parcel growth. People have to have a place to live, work, play. Annually, our parcel growth is approximately 2%. Right now, when we closed the tax roll in 2015, we were just over 78,500 parcels. We have added already 2%. So we closed the roll in September, and this is year to date, but the date is about 2.5 weeks old at this point. We had already hit 2% growth for this coming tax year, so we're growing quite quickly. And our median sales price for the county right now is $163,850, and that's this is residential. We've had growth from reappraisal to reappraisal. Those are our big benchmarks in the office of 12%. But from 2014 to 2015, again, when we closed the roll, we've already grown by 6%. And then our real property appraisal numbers, this is where they start to get really large. Reappraisal, we grew 17% in Montgomery County in real property market value. So in 2009, we were at just over $9.5 billion in real property value. Last reappraisal, we were at just under 11.5. And since that last reappraisal, we've already grown to just under $13 billion in total real property value. So what does that mean? That $13 billion brings into Montgomery County $106 million expected this year, and $30 million to the city of Clarksville. For the county government, that's about 60% of the budget. If you account for the federal and state school revenue, because we have a consolidated school system that's adjacent to Fort Campbell, then that brings it down to about 30% of the total funding for Montgomery County, and then 34% of the general city budget. So this is where I'm asking you to help me bridge the gap. The red line represents the total number of employees in the assessor's office. We have 12 deputies and me, a full-time working assessor. And then we have 79,835,000 parcels. There is a state law that recommends one deputy assessor for every 4,500 parcels to adequately cover all of the duties and responsibilities of an assessor's office. That is the discover list value, the customer service, and the reappraisal. So our current comparison, when we take our sister counties in Tennessee that are as similar to us in parcel count, of course we're first. Williamson's at 97,000, Rutherford's at 116, Sumner's closest at 79.6, and then Washington County and Sullivan County in the east part of the state. We have, scrolling down to the second to last row, 12 employees. So each deputy assessor in Montgomery County, in our office, is managing 6,667 parcels. And then compare that to, first of all, Tennessee Code that has a recommended 4,500, and then how other counties are operating. And what I'm asking for is 5 residential appraisers to bring us in more in line with state law and other assessors' offices in the state at 4,700 parcels per. So how do we do this? Each field appraiser, well, the 5 as a group is about $285,000 annually. Having come from the budget office, I can tell you that I understand the decision is made on a full fiscal year and not the last quarter of a fiscal year, so I've given you both sets of numbers. That's why there's so much up there. But the employee cost is $285,000. Fuel for 2 additional vehicles at $2,160. Supplies, training, vehicles. I've broken it out by FY16 and FY17. And then I've also included columns for the city portion. The reason I've included columns for the city portion is that state law requires, it says shall bill the city, the municipality, however many there are. We're fortunate that we share with just one. And the city is responsible for paying 50% of the cost of reappraisal per parcel in the city limits parcel within the whole county. So for us, 70% of our parcels lie within the city limits. And that gives a net contribution, FY16 county budget, net of city contribution of $118,567, or for a full fiscal year, $221,643. And what does that do? Well, what we do with that is we go out and we pick up more houses and put them on the roll. And our conservative 2016, tax year 16 estimate is we'll be able to increase revenue to Montgomery County with the additional 5 field appraisers at $1.35 million. Potentially up to about 1.6 million. And then for a full year of having 5 additional residential field appraisers, we would be able to bring in an additional $2.2 million in revenue to Montgomery County. So,
any questions of Ms. Hester? This did go to the budget committee. My microphone's not on. This did Budget Committee, and it was approved by the Budget Committee. Any questions of Ms. Hester? Mr. Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Hester, a quick question for you. You stated in the Budget Committee, and I wanted all the commission to understand this, that normally the appraisers go out in teams of 2, correct?
That's correct.
And they'll alternate what they do. You know, one writes up and the other does some other information, right? Is that correct?
Correct. The parcel card, the process for picking up a house is pretty extensive. I mean, we call it picking up a house, but you are walking the perimeter of the property, measuring the perimeter of property, calculating square footage, determining quality calls, construction material. We are making sure that what gets entered in the CAMA system is consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. So the field appraisers have to know what's going on in the county so that every appraisal, if we're doing our jobs as well as we can, is equitable.
Okay. And you're asking for 5?
Yes.
I was a math major, and when I divide 5 by 2, I don't come out with an even number. Can you explain that?
I sure can. I have one full-time residential field appraiser that I hired. Well, the one that's in the office on staff right now has been with us about, well, less than 6 months. So 5 would give me 3 teams of 2 to do the work of reappraisal, inspection review, the informal reviews, all the site visits required with those, and the new construction.
So there's one that's going out by themselves right now?
He is
and
going
they have a
out
vehicle?
right now with the residential coordinator, who is more of an analyst in responsibility, but has been a field appraiser for the last year and a half. And then I have one commercial guy that if somebody's sick or on vacation, then the commercial appraiser goes out with him, or my chief deputy.
Can you go back to slide 12?
I sure can.
I think it was 12. My eyesight might be bad. Yes, that's the one.
Yes, sir.
Back in 2010, we had 12 employees,
Yes.
right? And we're...
So I believe when the new CAMA system was purchased, before we went into the reappraisal preparation, there was some attrition in the office. And rather than hire position for position, there were some positions that were eliminated, so to speak, with attrition. That's how we went from 12 to 11.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Genus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple, 3 questions. My concern is that we, a few years back, spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this GPS system that we would be able to identify any new buildings on properties, driveways, upgrades, without having to dispatch folks in these teams to go out and do things. And then if there was questions, you would dispatch it for a particular rebuild or reappraisal. When you talk about new construction, and I bring in and I see I just bought this home for $150,000, you're going to tell me that you're going to send your appraisers out and appraise me higher than $150,000? Why are you going out there when I already how dare you raise my taxes? In other words, I'm being the citizen, I'm playing
Sure.
that role now.
Sure.
Why are you going out and doubling it?
Well, okay, so let's talk about the software first.
Where's our thousands of dollars?
That is how we appraise property. The software that you're referring to, the pictometry, is used for inspection review. That's the 25% of total real property parcels in Montgomery County that our office reviews every year.
Correct.
So I believe this past year that was finished June 30, 2015, that was 17,000 parcels that had to be reviewed with that inspection review. So that is done from a desktop. When you have an image that you can't use or you can't trust the measurement because you're getting multiple measurements, then you have to go out and do a site visit.
Then you send your team out.
Yes.
Because you see a new building that somebody hasn't talked about, some kind of a nice cement driveway that has mysteriously appeared.
And we don't even go out to pick up, the pole barn or the new driveway. I mean, we can measure that and
Through
pretty
the
well get that
pictometry.
on the roll with the
Okay.
pictometry unless there's something that prohibits that from being able to view it on your desktop.
So-
Now, as far as the new construction, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, so why the new people?
Okay, so as
That's
far
my
as
goal.
new construction, That's boots on the ground, so to speak. You do have to drive up, walk around that house, pick it up, make sure your measurement's correct. It's not just about the square footage and measuring that perimeter. That's where I was talking about the quality calls and construction material, and there's a parcel card contains electrical, cabinet and millwork, what kind of HVAC that
Codes
particular
does all
property.
that, though. They're already doing inspections and charging for new homes, right?
No, sir, that's not right. They
All right.
make sure that the property is built according to
The codes that we,
codes. That's a safety function, and we are a function of taxation.
All right, let me just, and again, I'm sorry, y'all, very quickly, just trying to understand this.
Sure.
I purchased a $200,000 home.
Mhm.
I come in and see you. You go out to my property and do whatever you're talking about, looking around. Would you ever appraise me above my $200,000? You just spent 4 hours of two people that I'm having to pay for. Why are they there?
If
When
you
everything is already on my piece of paper that I bought the house for.
Sure. A lot of times people will buy something from auction, and that sale is not considered arm's length. So the sales that we are allowed to use, according to state law, to build market value are qualified arm's length sales.
So now we're restricted down to just the auctions?
I'm
Not
sorry?
new property, you're talking about auctions?
In what I just said with arm's length sales, I'm talking about any property transaction in the county. As far as picking up new property, whether it's residential or commercial, it's always going to be boots on the, well, unless there's some incredible technology that we don't know about yet. But right now, for everybody, it's boots on the ground. Now, those values.
Why? I guess why? Why, when I already have a bill of sale, I have everything there? I don't understand why. You have everything you need to tax me according to my neighbors, according to my sale price.
Because this.
What are you doing out there?
What am I doing out?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to sound dumb.
The state constitution puts the onus, the responsibility of taxation and property value on the assessor.
Correct, I understand all that.
So it's.
And I have my bill of sale.
You do, but I still have to independently verify that what is physically sitting there on that lot is what shows up and then gets an equitable market value appraisal in the CAMA system, so that therefore that's what you're taxed upon.
I will hush, and I'd hate to eat up time. I'm just trying to understand all these people you need.
It's
when we have
complex.
systems in place, and you would never tax me more than what I bought the place for, or as I'm running an appeal all over the crazy place.
That's right.
And then the next time you reassess, you may get me for a barn that I forgot to say, or something else, but you're gonna be hot on my tail. Through the GPS system that we've already funded you for, I'm just trying to get a hold of it, and I apologize for eating up time, y'all. I hush. Thank you very much for sharing.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Genus. Commissioner Butts?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Miss Esther, you might have said it, and I don't have my glasses on tonight, so how much does this job pay?
$17.05 an hour, or just under $35 annually.
And the state recommends you to have?
One deputy assessor per 4,500 parcels.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tooley?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Everyone. I have a quick question, and Commissioner Butts almost kind of answered my question. Once these people are hired, is there a training period, and how quick can we get them out there?
There is a training period. We start them immediately in the field with an experienced appraiser. We would expect a field appraiser, if we do a good job of hiring, to be able to work independently in less than 4 weeks. As far as picking up a new house, there is training. I'll get to that in a minute. Doing an informal review, somebody comes in with an appraisal that's a much more detailed process, and it takes the training that I will talk about to do that most thoroughly and correctly. And then the inspection review is, I'm going to give it a month to get somebody up to speed on inspection review. But what the environment is people that are in cubicles, and the communication is pretty constant because, you know, we're picking up new construction and training in new subdivisions, but we're doing inspection review on houses maybe that have been sitting there for decades. Mm-hmm. So it might be something new, or maybe you're on a farm and looking at a pole barn. Anything, I mean, you drive around the entire county and you see the vast array of property types there are. So you could be doing that for quite some time. Now the training, there are different levels of training. In fact, assessors' offices are, the state puts so much value on training in an assessor's office that if an employee actually gets certified, then there is an annual compensation that the state will pay to that employee for having achieved that. So the first level of education is, it's level 1 certification, it's 4 classes and then a test, and total time to get there is about 180 hours.
Thank you, Commissioner Tooley. Commissioner Riggins?
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Aaron, I just want to touch on a couple of key points and ask for you to confirm them that were brought up in the Budget Committee, which are basically the reasons I support this resolution. For one thing, the 5 new employees is mandated by state law, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the second point is the annual increase to the county budget of roughly $220,000 in salaries and benefits is projected to gain the county over $2 million in revenue annually.
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Riggins. Any other questions for Ms. Hester? All right, thank you, ma'am. Our next item is Resolution 16-2-5, resolution requesting the Industrial Development Board to consider and submit an economic impact plan to the Civic Plaza Development Plan. I'll let Mr. Harvey have the floor on this. You may just want to briefly go through it, and any questions commissioners may have. Mr. Harvey?
All right, let me say at the outset that this is the economic impact plan, which has to be subjected to a noticed public hearing that complies with the statute that allows us to utilize the IDB to establish tax incremental financing plans that are limited in their scope and that only capture the increase in taxes in a designed project area. It's a working document, and so the one you actually have before you is the last revision we had coming out of the Budget Committee. But I have met with the IDB representatives and their attorney and have talked with the administration here as we've left the Budget Committee, and there are some changes, and we will probably have a hard copy of that, and I understand we'll submit that appropriately to you. But like any motion you hear, it's a resolution you hear, it's subject to being amended or reviewed or questions asked, but let me go over some of the concepts. There is a specific downtown district area, and if you look in the back, you'll see a diagram, and I really don't know how to describe that for you, except I can say it's centered around the downtown retail area, runs up through Franklin Street. As it goes toward College Street, it ends at, candidly, much of the property lines where Austin P has recently purchased property from Jenkins and Wynn. So it's somewhat bounded there, and it goes down Franklin Street all the way down to First, and it covers territories over by the Leaf Chronicle. The little white hole you see kind of in the center there is actually the courthouse we're in that block. And that would be the proposed TIF district. that TIF district meets the provisions of the statute. We believe it has to be approved by the comptroller's office. The concept is in its broadest use of the TIF statute. So it says that we will develop a protocol or an application process to allow a person to apply for TIF funding. And if they apply for TIF funding that is acceptable under that statute, then we can finance that funding, and we can finance it through several aspects. For example, if someone was going to build a $2 million project and it showed that it would increase that parcel within the TIF district's tax base by $2 million, then up to $200,000 of additional incremental financing could be available. We could use whatever tool we wanted to. This authorizes the issuance of bonds only to the extent that those bonds are non-recourse, not county debt, and subject to full payment by the collateral of the increase in taxes. In other words, the bond must be paid off within the time period of the TIF from the actual incremental increase in tax. So that's your financing cash flow. The TIF district is a parcel-oriented district. We therefore can capture tax increases in properties for which there is not a specific TIF project, but we would have to designate that. If we did that, it changes the concept of how much time is left for us to offer a TIF on that parcel. So it's not particularly recommended, but it's something we can do. In talking with one of the commissioners about the TIF process, I offered that you almost have to say, well, what if someone wants to do this? Then what are the 2 or 3 or 4 ways we can do that? Or what if someone wants to do something else? What are the 2 or 3 or 4 ways we can do that? And you almost have to create all of the different kinds of things that can happen, but it is subject to financing through the IDB based upon the specific cash flow of the increase in tax that is realized by the actual project. And there are some caps in here. And one of the changes, it talks about the fact that the IDB can or will fund a bond of up to $20 million as a principal amount. And that's one of the revisions we're making, because they're not going to be required to do anything until a project comes along. And if a project comes along and we need to TIF that with those future tax dollars that come in, the TIF district cannot ever exceed 20 million, even though it would be completely funded by that incremental tax flow. The TIF district, the parcels are subject to obtaining a TIF as long as they meet the statute within 10 years of the tax base year we collect as our baseline, which is 2015. And if it's begun within 10 years, it can be financed for as long as 20. So conceptually, it is a concept that allows for certain limited kinds of funds to be available to incentivize and create development. And our project, which allowed us to create this impact area, was the plaza that you commissioners have voted and begun that process.
Tim, do you want to go over the changes real
Sure.
quick? There was like 3 of them.
That's right.
And just call out the page number if you would.
I'll be happy to. And these changes are the development of discussions that are ongoing at all times. I think one of the changes, sorry. I don't have the blue line copy. I've got 2 different copies where we've made revisions along the way. One of the changes is on the very first page, the second paragraph in the project. I don't know how it formerly read, but it said that the impact plan to accelerate, can I see, you have the one that was in the resolution? Yeah, in paragraph number 2, the one you have says that the industrial development, to leverage the public investment in the plaza, the county has requested the Industrial Development Board of the County of Montgomery, the board, to adopt this economic impact plan to accelerate the development of the area surrounding the plaza and to provide financial assistance in paying for the cost of the plaza. Through discussions, through the committees, none of the TIF monies were ultimately earmarked to pay for the cost of the development of the plaza. The committees and the budget committee heard what's in the body of the document, which says that we actually are going to retain 10% of the TIF money that is developed for the, I'm sorry, 7%. Thank you for giving me your numbers. 7% of the TIF money, and that 7% will be used for long-term maintenance of the plaza and long-term programming and long-term handling of the activities in the plaza so that it's a vibrant, well-kept park area or plaza area, however you wish to define it. So that's been taken out so that the new version will say to adopt this economic impact plan to accelerate the development of the area surrounding the plaza and to promote economic development by providing funds to maintain and promote programming at the plaza, not to pay for the cost of the plaza. Next change, I think, is over on page 4 on mine, where it's talking about TIF obligations. That, again, is changed from will obtain financing, bonds or loans, whatever it says that, to that may be incurred to finance the costs. Because the original document said that the IDB will do this. It went on to explain as projects come in, but I felt like everybody would be a little more comfortable if it said they may do this as projects come in, not will.
We will email y'all this marked up copy too, first thing in the morning.
Another thing that's available in the plaza, which, and I want to walk softly on this, but there are several statutes that allow for tax incremental financing, and it was used to demolish and destroy and dispose of the hospital building and to reimburse a developer for his additional costs or her additional costs or its additional costs in the cost of getting that site ready by removal of the old structure. And it was financed by tax incremental financing that was created, the increase in the tax on the property that was anticipated, but it was financed through that developer actually being reimbursed by us, that tax increment, and Mr. Taylor's office oversees that now. So nobody got a bond, nobody borrowed any money, the developer borrowed the money, the developer spent it, but we agreed to pledge the tax incremental financing back to the developer on his loan. And that's called direct payment or direct reimbursement. That was absent from this agreement. That will be going in under, on page 5 as paragraph C under Roman numeral 5C. And that direct payment provision will be included. That was the public site that I was alluding to. And this, we've prepared a resolution for the IDB to pass. We have a timetable for them to put it on. I've met with the IDB folks. They'll have a public hearing if you pass it and ask them to do it. The specifics are not yet completely outlined by design. Because if we pass this and the IDB has the public hearing, this agreement allows for the participation by the city, which is a choice. But if the city participates, then their tax increment, which is 27.28% of the tax dollar, is just that much more money that can go into the increment that can be of benefit to the projects and the incentive. But they have the choice to participate or not participate. Right now, there's no real direct benefit to the county. We haven't woven anything in here to be of direct financial benefit to the county except the incentive to the program. And but we have agreed that we'll do the accounting as we are on the Publix project to allocate that through accounting and budgets. And then our role in specifically handling the applications might increase or decrease by agreement with the IDB, but we want to make sure we're flexible on the exact planning of how that's executed. But this gives us the right to promulgate the rules and the procedures to set up the application process with all these limits and all these caps on how far it can go. I'm sorry for the time.
Good job. Any questions of Mr. Harvey? All righty. Next is Resolution 16-2-6, a resolution amending the budget for the Montgomery County Juvenile Court. Mr. Ross, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Since July, we've been looking at computer systems that would gather and send required statistical information to the state, as well as have a way to print orders, court documents, and look up cases while at home. Leslie Kincaid from the Tennessee Administrative Office of the Courts highly recommended the Quest computer system, which is a web-based program created by Gottlieb and Wirtz out of Carmel, Indiana. The program allows the user to enter data only once with no redundancy, as well as everything else that we need in the system. The cost is $31,750. However, the AOC would offer us a $20,000 grant to help pay for it. $5,000 of the total cost is for a week of additional training. And since we could request that training at a later date or not at all, then the initial cost to get started would be $6,750. This is a licensing agreement fee for the users. The licensing agreement is $750 annually for each user. Currently, we'll start off with 9 users. I make this request today because the judges have approved it for our office. And getting the judges to agree on something is a miracle. As well as a trainer. The trainer has an opening in March, and she'd like to come and start training us. With your approval, the plan would be for us, for our office, to begin training on the system in March and then going live in June. There are 2 documents that the mayor is asked to sign if we go forward. The first is a memorandum of understanding from the Administrative Office of the Courts. In short, it states that the county will contract with Gottlieb and Wirtz, and that the juvenile court will enter our statistical information on the system. The second document is from Gottlieb and Wirtz, where the county agrees to pay the licensing fee for the next 5 years. Currently, the youth service officers are authorized limited access to the TINSA system, which the clerks use. However, they can't print out documents, they can't enter data, or access the system from home. Our juvenile probation staff is using an outdated system from Accessed. It was created by Information Systems. It's unsecure and can no longer be updated or repaired. The Foster Care Review Board are putting their inputs on a program called Professional Right, a DOS program made for our office in the 1980s. I'm here today to respectfully ask for your approval for us to move forward with the Quest web-based system beginning March 23rd, 2016.
Any questions of Mr. Ross? Commissioner Sokol.
Thank you, Mayor. How long has your office been in negotiation to get this done?
We started looking at it in July.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Over the course of my tenure with the county, I've seen several different computer systems used by various county agencies, and I've seen numerous times where they didn't quite sync or didn't communicate with the systems being used by other agencies. So has this been looked at to make sure that it's still going to operate with the TINSYS and with the HTE that the other clerks are using?
It doesn't operate with Tencent, and there's no reason why we need to operate with Tencent. It's separate. Like I said, the Administrative Office of the Courts has recommended it for a juvenile system. It's case management, it's not financial.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any other questions of Mr. Ross? All right, thank you, Mr. Ross. Next on our agenda are our reports. Commissioner Nichols, the nominating committee chairman, I think y'all have a couple that you'll bring before us next Monday night, or at least one.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The nominating committee met at 17:30 today. We had 2 items to review. The Community Health Foundation, excuse me, has 3 positions to be filled. They have deferred until April until they can consider the nominations, and they'll report out to us for their recommendations in April. The second item was the Health Board, and they have made a nomination for the medical position. Dr. Carlo Pike has been nominated to fill the unexpired term of Dr. Harold Van, who resigned. Dr. Pike's term expires in October 2016. That's in the report, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Under mayor nominations, a judicial commissioner will have Alonzo Giles nominated to serve a 1-year term as a new part-time judicial commissioner, with that term expiring February 2017. You'll see in your agenda your reports filed. And just one last item. We do have a new voting system, new intercom. I think everybody's probably been able to use it to go with it. We're probably Monday night, next Monday night, there'll still be some tweaks that have to be added. We're trying to get it where it will tally visually up here. It will be tallying for our clerk, Ms. Jackson, but trying to get it where it will tally up on the screen itself. I've also had some comments about the voting process. When you vote, it does not show, it only shows that you voted. It does not show that you voted yes, no, or abstained. I've been told there was a resolution that was done regarding that, and to date, we have not found any type of resolution. So, Commissioner Vallejos.
Mayor, well, I really think we ought to keep it the way it was. Our city does it, our state officials does it, Congress does it. I don't see what's the big deal of us not showing it. My understanding is that they voted on this 15 years ago, spoke about it. And I think if we're going to make that kind of decision, then this body here, the body as a whole, 21 of us ought to make that decision, whether they want it visible or not. I mean, it doesn't sway anything. I think if it stays up there, whether, I don't think none of us are scared to push a no button or a yes button. So I think it's great to be visible up there and before all our eyes.
Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say the same thing Commissioner Vallejo said on the voting process. I've heard from other county commissioners that 15 years ago, whether it was a hands vote or a resolution, they weren't sure. I think Commissioner Sokol, you were one that was here during that vote. If I can yield the floor to.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Gibbs and Commissioner Baggett were on the commission at the time it was done, and it was done with a consent vote at the time Mayor Weiland was in office. It was the very first meeting in this body that decision had been made, but it was done with the commissioners, and that was, at that time, their desire. So it's up to you, Mayor, to decide how to proceed from here. But it was not done by resolution, it was just done by consent.
It really doesn't matter to me. I don't vote unless there's a tie. But I'm not scared when I vote for it to show up there, whether it's a yes, no, or an abstain. But it's totally up to this body. I'm just telling you and Skip, you help me. What the software does right now, I'm sure we could modify it where when a person voted, it would show they voted yes, they voted no, or they abstained.
My understanding that it's supposed to be capable. I don't know how to do that. We'll have to get back to the developers to make that.
Okay. So I'm not sure. Commissioner Sokol, you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Butts?
If my memory serves me, though, at the way it is now, it shows you after the fact, correct?
Yeah, do you have that
Right.
little demo? You could.
I mean, we don't have to do all that, Mayor.
Well, I think what it does is when you vote, it just shows a check mark that you voted. It does not show that you voted yes. It does not show that you voted no. It does not show that you abstained. It just shows that you voted. Once all the votes have been cast, they tally the vote. The screen does show how you voted.
It's live now.
Yeah. Yeah, what y'all want to vote on? It's nothing binding, I can assure you. But yeah, if you would just, you can. Yeah, you got to mark present first. Commissioner Sokol, Commissioner Genus, Commissioner Gildersleeve. There you go, Commissioner Genus. So, yeah, you'd have the ability to change your vote right now if you wanted to. And then we would ask, and so that's how the system would work now. Commissioner Gildersleeve, did you have a comment?
No comment.
Okay. Commissioner Vallejos.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. So do we have the ability to turn it up? Because I know the old one automatically would show the yes and no vote, right? Yeah. So do we have that ability to change it back to when we're voting, it says yes or no?
It's my understanding the software is capable of acting with developers.
Okay.
There's no checkbox to turn that on.
But there's an ability, yeah, because I'm hearing from commissioners, you know, even now, right now as we're here, that they'd like to leave it the same. So that's my take. I think we ought to leave it the same and work it to where it's we're able to see how we'll vote. I mean, just straight up.
Well, with all due respect, that shows you how you vote. It just doesn't allow you to count you to count the votes for everybody's voted.
I got that, Mayor. I'm just saying that it shows you your yes or your no vote.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we would like to just leave it the way it was, and say yes or no.
Okay. Commissioner Harper?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd prefer with my other fellow commissioners that we leave it the same unless we vote to change it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Commissioner Gannon?
Under the system that you're proposing to go to, in order to change your vote, would be before the votes are tallied or after?
No, you couldn't change it after they were tallied.
Okay.
If it was all checks, once it's all checks, then you offer to the commission, would anyone like to change their vote? They would have the opportunity to change their vote at that time. Then they would tally the vote.
Gotcha.
Commissioner Sokol.
Thank you, Mayor. Why don't we just go ahead and ask the body what their preferences are?
It suits me. If you want to leave it the way it was, raise your hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you want to change it, raise your hand. Yeah. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh. Commissioner Sokol?
Thank you, Mayor. What are we voting on? To keep the system as it is, or are we changing it back to the old way?
There is no as is.
The as is would be to keep it the way the old system was, where when you voted, it showed if you voted yes or no, and everybody could look at the votes and count the votes and then decide how they wanted to vote.
The old way.
The old way.
No.
And I think everybody was clear, so it looked like it was like 12 to whatever. Skip, if you'll get our programmers to work on that. And with no further business, we stand adjourned.